World War I is over and the Ottoman Empire has fallen. The empire's former territories in the Middle East come under British and French mandates. Throughout the war, Great Britain made conflicting promises to the Zionists, the French, and the Arabs. They promised the Zionists they'd create a Jewish colony in Palestine. They promised France control over Syria. And they promised to make Sharif Hussein king of the Arabs if he revolted against the Ottomans. Sharif Hussein thought this meant all of Arabia, including Palestine and Syria. But in the end, all he got was the Hijaz, the slim strip of land running along the western Arabian coast. Desperate to reconcile their wartime promises, Winston Churchill suggests installing Sharif Hussein's sons, Prince Faisal and Prince Abdullah, as rulers of Iraq and Transjordan. T.E. Lawrence worked with the esteemed British explorer and Middle East expert Gertrude Bell on a plan to install Faisal as king of Iraq. Gertrude Bell's extensive travels throughout the Middle East made her an expert on the region. Like T.E. Lawrence, she supported the Hashemite family and felt they'd be perfect British clients to rule over the Middle East. But Great Britain knew they could not just impose Prince Faisal on the Iraqis. They had to make Faisal's rise to king of Iraq look organic. They did not want Faisal to look like a British puppet, even though that is exactly what he was going to be. Throughout the spring of 1921, Gertrude Bell and T.E. Lawrence put their plan into action. First, Faisal, who was residing in London at the time, secretly traveled to Mecca where his father was king of the Hijaz. Once in Mecca, Faisal sent several telegrams to Arab leaders in Iraq stating the people there were inviting him to be their leader. On June 24th, 1921, Faisal arrived in Basra and began campaigning for the imaginary throne of Iraq that did not exist. Everything about this scheme was invented by the British. There was no kingdom of Iraq. Prince Faisal was not from Iraq, and no one in Iraq wanted him as their king. The British made it all up. Prince Faisal, who was born and raised in the Hijaz, wanted to rule over people he had no real connection to. While Faisal was working to win over popular opinion, the British remained quiet, pretending to be neutral. But of course, they were funding Faisal's campaign the whole time. All of these shenanigans were pointless. Most Iraqis did not support Prince Faisal. Take, for instance, the Kurds, centered around Mosul to the north. They did not want to be ruled by any Arab, so they boycotted most of the political proceedings. But even Arab Iraqis did not support Prince Faisal's ridiculous campaign. Talib al-Naqib, the former mayor of Basra, was one of Faisal's fiercest opponents. He spent the summer of 1921 drumming up support, criticizing Faisal, and speaking out against the British occupation. Gertrude Bell grew concerned Talib al-Naqib might derail the British plans, so she had him arrested and exiled. The established Iraqi elite, whose families had been involved in local politics for generations, were also opposed to Faisal. They offered several alternatives to the British, such as bringing in former Ottoman officials to help administer Iraq, or perhaps turning Iraq into a republic instead of a monarchy. Some suggested dividing Iraq into two separate nations, Basra and Baghdad. A few even preferred letting the British rule Iraq directly like they did with India. But the British turned these all down. They were determined to install their fake king over their fake country. Abdulaziz ibn Saud, ruler of the Najd, was also opposed to Faisal. Even though the Saudis and Hashemites were both British clients, the two families had a long rivalry. With Faisal's brother, Prince Abdullah, in Transjordan and his father, Sharif Hussein, in the Hijaz, Ibn Saud did not want yet another Hashemite state in Arabia. He threatened to invade Iraq and Transjordan if this happened. The Saudi threat never materialized. The British simply increased Ibn Saud's stipend and he stopped complaining about Faisal in Iraq. With these objections out the way, things began to move pretty quickly. In the previous episode, we mentioned how the British established a governmental body in Iraq called the Council of Ministers. This council gave the appearance of being an Arab government while being controlled by the British. On July 11th, 1921, the Council of Ministers declared Faisal the constitutional king of Iraq. However, since they wanted to promote Iraq as a democracy, this had to be confirmed by popular vote. On August 18, 1921, the votes came in and Faisal won with 96% of the electorate. This election was almost certainly influenced by the British. On August 23, 1921, Mesopotamia was officially renamed Iraq, and Faisal ibn Hussein ibn Ali al-Hashemiyya was crowned as its first king. It did not take long for the cracks in Winston Churchill's plan to begin showing. Prince Abdullah in Transjordan was a weak ruler trying to govern a people who did not recognize his authority. As predicted, Abdullah depended heavily on the British for support. When he begged for British help putting down a small revolt, Churchill was ready to get rid of him. T.E. Lawrence had to convince Churchill that helping Abdullah was cheaper and easier than sending a full battalion to occupy Transjordan. But the biggest problem, for the British at least, was neither Abdullah in Transjordan nor his brother Faisal in Iraq. It was their father, Sharif Hussein ibn Ali, in the Hijaz. While his two sons went along with Britain's shenanigans, Sharif Hussein was still angry about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. The old man and the British Empire were in a war of wills. He demanded the British honor their promises and make him king of Arabia and not just king of the Hijaz. Sharif Hussein did not care about his sons ruling over Iraq and Transjordan. As far as he was concerned, these were just pathetic attempts by the British to turn his sons against him. The Hijaz, Transjordan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine were all supposed to be part of his kingdom. That's what the British had promised him. And until they lived up to that promise, Sharif Hussein refused to cooperate with them and refused to sign the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Sèvres. The Treaty of Sèvres, which supposedly dismantled the Ottoman Empire, included the terms of the Balfour Declaration, Article 95. The high contracting parties agreed to entrust, by application of the provisions of Article 22, the administration of Palestine within such boundaries as may be determined by the principal Allied powers to a mandatory to be selected by the said powers. The mandatory will be responsible for putting into effect the declaration originally made on November 2, 1917 by the British government and adopted by the other Allied powers in favor of the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Sharif Hussein was adamant that he would never agree to give Palestine to the Jews and Syria to the French. They might take it, but he'd never give it away. The British retaliated by suspending his £30,000 stipend. However, with Faisal in Iraq and Abdullah in Transjordan, the British tried one last time to patch things up with their former ally. The British, hoping to meet him halfway, offered Sharif Hussein a new agreement called the Anglo-Hijazi Treaty. This new treaty recognized Sharif Hussein's sovereignty but did not define any specific borders to his kingdom. The treaty also left out any mention of the French in Syria and any references to the Balfour Declaration or Zionist colonization of Palestine. The British also promised to release his stipend and give him an additional £100,000. Sharif Hussein would not have to acknowledge the Balfour Declaration, Jewish colonization of Palestine, nor the French mandates in Syria. All he had to do was acknowledge the British mandates in Iraq, Transjordan, and Palestine. The British desperately wanted Sharif Hussein to sign the treaty because this would legitimize their activities in the Middle East. As the colonial rulers of India, Great Britain ruled over millions of Muslims. They did not want to be perceived as colonizing the heart of the Muslim world. But No matter what they offered, Sharif Hussein refused to sign. He felt honor-bound to defy the British until they lived up to their original promises. Not only was his honor at stake, but also the honor of all Arabs. From Sharif Hussein's perspective, the British had made promises to the Arabs, the French, and the Zionists. The French got Syria, the Zionists got Palestine, but the Arabs got cheated. Of course, this was not entirely true. The British were literally creating new Arab nations out of thin air, but Sharif Hussein did not see it that way. His sons, Prince Faisal and Prince Abdullah, were younger and more pragmatic. They had seen the might of the British and French empires in action and felt it was useless to stand against them. Unlike their father, they were willing to go along with the Europeans and get what they could for now and perhaps negotiate for more later. The British finally got tired of dealing with the old man in Mecca. They cut off communications with Sharif Hussein and got Prince Abdullah to sign the treaty instead. The British finally had Faisal ibn Hussein, an Arab they could trust and control, ruling Iraq. However, King Faisal began demanding independence shortly after taking the throne. Faisal wanted to end Britain's mandate on Iraq and be treated as an independent nation. This sparked several months of negotiations, culminating in the Anglo-Iraqi Treaty of October 1922. This agreement gave Iraq nominal independence, with Britain controlling its military and foreign affairs. Many Iraqis disagreed with this new relationship, but the British did not care. They suspected Iraq had untapped oil reserves, particularly in the Mosul region. The British were not about to leave Iraq just so Faisal could sign oil deals with the French or the Americans. This forced Great Britain to deal with another one of its many conflicting and overlapping wartime promises. As we mentioned earlier, Mosul was predominantly Kurdish, and after World War I, Great Britain had promised to carve out a homeland for them called Kurdistan. This proposed nation was supposed to lie somewhere between southern Turkey and northern Iraq, but a lot had changed since then. First of all, the British decided to prop up Faisal as their fake king of Iraq. This directly conflicted with the idea of a Kurdish republic. But more importantly, Mustafa Kemal and the Turks had driven the foreign occupiers out of Anatolia. This ruined any chance of carving a Kurdish state out of Turkey. In June 1922, the Kurds revolted against Faisal and the British and declared their own state. But within 2 years, the revolt was put down and the idea of Kurdistan never came to fruition. Even today, this is still an issue for many Kurds. In the summer of 1924, a new Iraqi constitution was drafted, establishing the country as a parliamentary democracy with a constitutional monarchy. In 1925, King Faisal granted all oil rights in Iraq to the British-owned Iraq Petroleum Company for 75 years. 2 years later, after digging several wells in and around Mosul, the IPC finally struck oil. On October 14, 1927, crude oil gushed into the air at Baba Gorgor, just north of Kirkuk, about 80 miles south of Mosul. This was the first oil field discovered in Iraq. Baba Gorgor would remain the largest oil field in the world for nearly 2 decades. Needless to say, this discovery changed Iraq forever. On June 30th, 1930, Iraq and Great Britain signed another treaty setting a timetable for full independence. And on October 3rd, 1932, the British mandate officially ended and Iraq was admitted to the League of Nations. King Faisal I of Iraq died in 1933 and was succeeded by his son, Ghazi. Less than 2 years later, King Ghazi was killed in a car accident and the crown passed to his 4-year-old son, Faisal II. We all know what happened in 1948 with the Arab-Israeli War and the establishment of the State of Israel. Angered by this loss, a group of Egyptian army officers began plotting to overthrow their king. King Fuad I of Egypt was a British puppet and never fully supported the war against Israel. The Free Officers Movement, which included future Egyptian presidents Mohammed Naguib, Gamal Abdel Nasser, and Anwar Sadat, forced the king to abdicate and flee to Italy in July 1952. 5 years later, a similar thing happened in Iraq. Just like King Fuad in Egypt, King Faisal II was considered a puppet king installed by British overlords. The Iraqi military was inspired by the Egyptian Free Officers Movement and believed in Gamal Abdel Nasser's pan-Arab nationalism. The tipping point came with the Suez Crisis of 1956 when King Faisal II of Iraq was about 17 years old. Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser wanted to nationalize his nation's resources, and Egypt's most valuable resource, the Suez Canal, was controlled by the British. When Abdel Nasser nationalized the canal, a coalition of British, French, and Israeli troops invaded Egypt. Worried the Soviet Union might intervene, the United States brokered a truce, resulting in the withdrawal of foreign troops. King Faisal II of Iraq despised Gamal Abdel Nasser and supported the invasion of Egypt, which infuriated Iraq's military commanders. 21 months later, the Iraqi Free Officers Movement toppled King Faisal II. However, the deposed king and his family were not sent into exile like the deposed king of Egypt. Instead, they were marched into the palace courtyard and machine-gunned to death. This marked the end of the Hashemite dynasty in Iraq. The movement that overthrew King Faisal II was made up of various groups. One of them was the Iraqi branch of the Ba'ath Party, a socialist nationalist group originally founded in Damascus. After King Faisal II, Iraq experienced 3 more coups, culminating in the Ba'ath Party taking over the country in 1968. One of the organizers of the last coup was a young man named Saddam Hussein, who would later become Iraq's vice president. Saddam Hussein eventually became president of Iraq in 1979. In 1980, President Saddam Hussein of Iraq launched a surprise war against Iran a few months after its revolution. Iran and Iraq had disputed for several years over shipping access in the Persian Gulf, but these disputes had never escalated to full-scale war. With Iran weakened after 2 years of protests and a new Shiite Islamic government, Saddam Hussein decided to strike. This would be the first of many miscalculations by Saddam Hussein. Though he did not know it at the time, he had just opened the door to decades of U.S. intervention in the Middle East. We all know what happened next. The Iran-Iraq war was devastating, leading to nearly a decade of destruction on both sides. Barely 2 years after that war ended, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait and soon found himself fighting against the entire world. This first Gulf War ended with a coalition victory, and Iraq was crushed by numerous sanctions and a no-fly zone. And then, in 2003, using faulty evidence and a very shaky accusation of weapons of mass destruction, the United States again went to war against Iraq. Saddam Hussein was toppled and executed. The WMD accusation was proven to be false, and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis were killed. And, to top it all off, the instability caused by the invasion led to the formation of Daesh. And today, Iraq's closest ally and biggest trading partner is none other than its former enemy, the Islamic Republic of Iran. In the next and final episode of this series, we will discuss Prince Abdullah in Transjordan and the man who started it all, Sharif Hussein ibn Ali.